Hello and welcome everyone to the first match in the Gentry Open, not the Gentry Open, the Gentry Invitational for season 16. We'll be seeing Tom playing against Alan, and let's just have a quick look at their decks before we head into the actual match. So we see Tom's deck on screen here. He is playing, as you can very clearly see, a red deck wins, or mono red if you may. It kind of combines the most aggressive cards that he can find: Kumano Faces, Kazakan, Phoenix Chick, Play with Fire, Festival Crasher, with burn spells. So good creatures and burn spells. There's some Reckless Impulse in there as well, just to get a little bit of that velocity going, so that in the mid game he still has cards to bring out. We see that the only thing costing more than 2 in his entire deck are his rares and mythics, so these will be finishing cards, but not really cards that he's gonna be counting on really. We also see that half of the spells in his deck cost just 1, so expect Tom to come out the gates very aggressively. This is the kind of deck that really wants to win as fast as possible, because they know they won't be doing much in the late game. Now, keep that in mind as we have a look at Alan's deck here. We see a black-white deck, and it's called midrange. Why is it called midrange? Well, because it aims to do a lot of slow but incrementally growing things. Well, what does that mean? Well, we have a lot of cards here that draw extra cards, which means he stays with a full hand. He can keep doing things to his opponent. To do that, he has Phyrexian Missionary, which we see here, who is going to return creatures. He can play it early for 2 as a stop sign for aggressive decks, and once we get to that midpoint where he has the mana for it, he'll start casting it with Kicker, getting back creatures that have died before. We have Recommission, also bringing back creatures for him. And then one of the key cards for the deck for sure is Rite of Oblivion. You have to sack a non-land permanent, but you get to exile a non-land permanent from your opponent. And exiling is a bit of a thing in Gentry right now, because we have a lot of graveyard interactions that get interrupted by this. Now, the creatures you want to sacrifice, you don't want to lose card advantage on, so he has a whole slew of creatures like Spirited Companion, Inspiring Overseer, and Phyrexian Rager, which all draw him cards. And as you can see, we're already heading up into that 3 mana slot, so a bit of a slower deck for sure than the one we've seen. And then we have victory conditions which will show up for him. He aims to have a slower game, slow down both him and his opponent, and allowing these very powerful cards to be drawn. For some reason there's 2 Hero of the Dunes in this representation of the deck, but I'm pretty sure this needs to be a extra land. The rares, all very much capable of turning around games on their own, and very often that is the aim of the deck here: make you deal with them and then reanimating them again, bringing them back with missionaries, etc. So mono red wants to finish as fast as possible. White black midrange wants to draw out the game and have their rares and mythics take over. Let's have a look at how this match is actually going to turn out, shall we? And we shouldn't have background sound anymore. So that was an issue we had in the first version we did here. Let's hope we don't have that anymore. All right, both players are on their opening 7, and Tom gets to start with a Phoenix Chick, a very aggressive 1-drop, has that evasion, has haste. Alan taking it a little easier with the land fetch there. That's the Capenna lands that sacrifices when it enters the battlefield to get a basic land. Gets a Festival Crasher, so any spell that he's going to cast from now on is going to be doing extra damage in the form of power for that Festival Crasher. So very nice opening for Tom, especially if he can follow this up with some spells that interact favorably on the board. Some removal, gets rid of the blocker, makes him hit a bit harder. Alan, in the meantime, right on cue, Spirited Companion, a 1/1 for 2, draws him a card. So he was hoping to get a little chump block in, but we have the play with fire for Tom to get rid of that before blocks. And like I said, Festival Crasher gets that little bit of extra power. And there we have the Phyrexian Missionary. So Phyrexian Missionary, as I said, you can drop it early as a stop sign for aggressive decks, and then in the mid to late game turns into that card advantage and value engine for you, because you get to take the best creature that has died already and put it back in hand. Another Phoenix Chick here, and another play with fire for Alan. This one goes to the for Tom. This one goes to the face because that pumps the Festival Crasher. And Alan responds with a Disfigure on that Festival Crasher, which got +2/+0 and then -2/-2. So it's a 1/1, gets killed by the Missionary, which has lifelink. So Alan stays on his life total. So that's only the -2 from that play with fire. Attacks back with the Missionary. The Phoenix Chicks have flying anyway, so might as well get some damage in. And there we have some Maleficency or something. I keep forgetting the name of the card. It's -2/-2 on all creatures and exiles them. My cat wants to have some attention apparently, or not. Alright, so our players are heading into the sideboard, and we can have a very quick look at what they're bringing in. For Alan, Duresses are really interesting, gets to disassemble that hand. Eaten Alive, probably not so interesting. His creatures will usually get to block. Cathar Commando, not really the card he wants to. Emergency Wealth, doesn't do so much for him either. And Overwhelming Remorse is just too slow to be played in this match. So we'll probably just see the Duresses from him. From Tom, we have some extra removal. Not sure if that's going to be very interesting for him. We have the Abrade. So Abrade more interesting because it deals with 3 toughness creatures, which is something that we see a lot of in Alan's deck. So let's fast forward a little bit through sideboarding. Zoom, 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 zoom. Oh, that's a bit too much. So opening hands. I think there have been mulligans at this point, but we'll see in a minute. No, both players on their opening 7s. No 1-drop for Tom. And as we said, half of his, 20 cards in his deck only cost 1. So that is a bit surprising to see. That's a Kumano attacks Kazakan, a card we would usually see on turn 1. Yeah, no. It puts a +1/+1 counter, so if you want to sequence things together, then it does make sense. Yeah, no. 1-drop, 2-drop. Everything is just being played a turn too late. As though Tom has been top decking these. He wouldn't want to sequence his cards like this, I think. And after the duress taking away his Planeswalker, we now see a Elazin Vec, which is a 2/2 Dead Toucher. I think we'll get it on the card viewer soon. That's quite problematic for Tom, because it does give that little bit of life gain to Alan, and all Alan really needs to do is buy time as much as he can. Reckless Impulse reveals land and a Moonrager Slash. That's the 3 mana, 3 damage spell that costs 1 when it's night, but it is never going to turn night for Tom. Lightning Strike helps out, gets rid of the Elazin Vec. And it looks like Tom has free reign. That infantry already has 3 +1/+1 counters. Inspired Overseer for Alan, gains him a life, draws him a card, but he really needs to find that answer for the infantry. That is going to be the big problem here. That's the Moon Ragers. Slash, trying to get rid of the Overseer does, and Alan fires off the this figure to get rid of the flipped Kumanu. Well, transformed, pardon my French. Kumanu there. So back and forth, and that infantrist just keeps growing bigger. Alan really needs to fight one of his Rite of Oblivions and something to sack for it. Phyrexian Missionary gets back the Inspired Overseer. This is all very nice for Alan, but it is slow and he's already on single digits. Tom on 4 cards in hand. With just a few burn spells. He could actually finish Alan off here, but let's see what he actually has in hand. Oh, the Ancestral Anger, giving it +1. And another +1? Is this +2 on the first one? I forgot. Where X is 1 plus the number of cards. So the first one is just for 1. So we're heading for 7 here. 8 for 8, down to 1. 2 cards in Tom's hand, so that could just spell doom for Alan as soon as Tom untaps. Let's see how this wraps up. Land for Alan. Can he gain life? Can he get out of range? Gain 1 life. That still leaves him dead to everything. And he knows, just scoops him up. Can't even answer the infantrist. And our players are going to game number 3. Seems like there's been some mulligans this time over, though. Alan has gone down to 6. I guess that means Tom is also down to 6. And we're off with the first duress of the game. Gets rid of a Kumanu, attacks Kazakhstan. And let's see how Tom attacks back. Phoenix Chick packs away for 1. And Alan has a Spirited Companion. Draws the extra card. Won't be able to block with the Phoenix because it has flying. The Phoenix, that is. And there's the Infantrist that won Tom game number 1 here. The little dwarf that could. Life gains 1 life and fetch for Alan. And seems to have passed the turn. No 2 mana play. Probably, maybe keeping up this figure here for Tom. Reckless for Alan. Jesus, I'm getting all the names confused. What's it? I forgot. Reckless Impulse, yes. Exiled. I think that was 2 lands for him. And we have that Ancestral Anger pushing that Electrostatic Infantrist up to scary levels. Out of range for this figure. So Alan did have a terrible start here. Not doing anything on turn 3 is really not where you want to be in these kinds of matchups. Attacks back since he won't be able to block anyway. There's another Reckless Impulse, another +1/+1 counter on the Infantrist, and a revealed Moon Rager Slash there. This time Alan does have something to answer. That's the Wandering Emperor. Gets to exile. Yes, exile. Perfect. Thank you very much, Tom. A tapped card. And there we go. Alan probably is gonna make the Samurai with the Wanderer, since unless he can answer the Phoenix, but even if he can answer the Phoenix Chick, there's a Moon Rager Slash. Yeah, decides to go. Well, the Moon Rager Slash wouldn't be so bad, but another Phoenix Chick would be awkward. So gets the 2/2 Vigilance, Samurai. smacks him with the companion, still on a healthy life total. Another spirited companion, and all of a sudden Alan looks like he is stabilizing at quite a healthy life total. Starts ticking up a little bit. Oh, desperation mode it seems. Play with fire, targeting Alan. Not the kind of play you usually see in this kind of situation. So usually is a signal that the player needs that scry to set up his or her future turns. And it looks like double abrade in Tom's hand. So removal that can only really hit creatures, and Tom has decided to go full aggro here. Moon Ragers slash to the face of Alan. Chick comes in, but this does look like a race he might be losing. Abrade to get rid of the samurai, and oh, yes, Kumano attacks Kazakan, 1 damage more, 1 peck with the little phoenix chick. And what else does Tom have in hand? Just barely can't have a peek. I think we saw a second abrade. Ooh, an extra phoenix chick. That's gonna come in with a +1/+1 counter thanks to the saga. So that's 3 in the air, but Alan does have the next disfigure. Tom flashed us another mountain, so that's 1 rather dead card in hand. Pardon? And the saga transforms into the 2/2. Is it gonna connect here? Because that will most likely flip the race in favor of Tom. No, another disfigure for Alan. He still has 1 card in hand. I do believe Tom is on Mountain and Abrade. He is losing the race at this point, so he does need something to pop up. I'm not sure what Alan was thinking about here for his attack. The little doggos can't stop a burning chicken. Oh, but I see a very, very shiny mythic there. Yep, a Shouldered the Apocalypse. The race is over at this point. Whenever Tom draws a card, he loses 2 life. Whenever Alan draws a card, he gains 2 life. Ancestral Anger on the chick. I think that's the second one, so that's +2. And again, loses 2 life from the Shouldered. Yeah, there we see the second anger. So that anger hits for 2. Well, makes the chick hit for 2. And I think we see Abrade and Play with Fire. Yes, Abrade and Play with Fire to get rid of the Shouldered. But now we're hitting for 3 with the chick. The attack back puts him on 4. Then he hits him down to 2. Attack back on 2. Hits him to 1. So Tom is losing the race. Draws another mountain here. Slaps it on the table a bit frustrated. And attacks. There's quite a few top decks that Tom had here that would have wrapped up the game completely. And Alan does get a top deck that ends the game. Missionary gets the Shouldered, and Tom will die to the trigger in his upkeep. So that is the end of the first game of the Gentry Invitational. I keep saying it wrong. Number for season 16. Tom showing off that Mono Red has game. It struggles for sure in the deck building department because a lot of the cards that you expect to be common are actually uncommon right now. Play with Fire is a very good example of that. You'd expect Shock to be common, and that really puts a bit of a strain on your mana. In the same vein, Moonrager's Slash is a bit of an underwhelming card currently, and yeah, you just have to play it because there's no better or alternatives. One of the most iconic cards missing that you might have noticed is Monetary Swift Spear, but most players seem to think that it's just too fragile. It dies, it does one hit and then dies to disfigure, is the usual narrative that we have. On Alan's side, there's not much to the deck that we can discuss, or that seems like it has obvious omissions, though it is cementing itself to be a really important cornerstone in the Gentry meta game, as we see very often with black-white mid-range answer-based decks. You can see a lot of flexibility in how they're going to address different opponents, that duress, the disenchants, the extra removal in the sideboard, so it can really warp and shape itself very easily to different opponents. So let's see how our players will do in the rest of the tournament. Enjoy.